You can walk it off. Just try. By Nim P. Pseudo. Chapter 3. Of all the questions he could have posed, it had to be that one. He simply had to raise his idiot voice and bring up the arm. Quirrell shot to his feet. What purpose? But Anthem did not answer. She did not turn. Quirrell and the bench diminished behind her. What do you mean? Quirrell asked, louder. After an unanswered heartbeat, he was in pursuit, pausing only to rectify the stranded moss creep with a nudge. Anthem traversed the tunnels in long, deliberate steps. Her glaive was out before her, parting the hanging moss with curt slashes. Quirrell found himself running just to keep pace. What do you mean? He repeated, the boom of his voice giving Anthem no pause. As I said, I have a matter to attend to. You need not accompany me on it. With a graceful leap, she crossed an acid-filled precipice. Yet it has only now become pressing? Is this another game? Quirrell summoned his strength to follow and felt his gut twist as he narrowly cleared the gap. Not a game, no. Had you not stumbled upon me, then I would have seen this finished already. Seen what finished? She stopped, just long enough to consider a trampled bit of foliage. You yourself guessed it. I am no oathless knight, no banished queen, only a broken warrior seeking revenge. Quirrell chased her down a path of overgrown cobbles. Against whom? A creature resides in these mossy chambers, a towering shadow, a stalking fiend. You heard it once already. Its roar alone scattered those squits. There was a prickling upon Quirrell's shell. He already knew the answer, yet couldn't stop himself from asking. But why? She tore through some obstructing brush with a savage chop. It took my arm, Quirrell. My martial prowess. The only thing left to me in this world. I mean to steal from it in kind, no matter what may come. Quirrell pushed through the shreds. So that creature already bested you in combat? At the peak of your strength? It did. Then why do you pursue it? You've no hope. You realize that, yes? Anthem kept her gaze low, intent upon the path. Your shoulder is still injured, Quirrell added. You cannot accomplish this. She strode on. The shadows deepened, and the sickly sweet smell of rot hung in the air. Then it's suicide? Quirrell shouted. But Anthem said nothing. Quirrell's breath came in painful gulps. Stop this! Have some sense! What happened to that restraint you prized? She wheeled on him, so abruptly that they nearly collided. I expended it all indulging your frivolous questions. I will do as I see fit with the dregs of my life. There is no vow binding you to me. Wander elsewhere if this upsets you so. And just as quickly, she was back in motion. For the first time in their walking debate, Quirrell stopped. He felt as though he really had collided, but rather chest first into a frigid wall. The rustle of Anthem's steps began to fade around a corner, and for the slightest second Quirrell considered turning back, washing his claws of the obdurate mantis, and going on his own merry way. But something deep within him could not abide that. He dug his feet into the damp earth and raced after her. Quirrell found Anthem before an arched tunnel, unlike the others he had so far seen. Spikes ringed its entrance, and as Quirrell drew closer, he realized that they were not spikes at all, but huge, curved teeth nearly half his height. They were scattered all about the area like warding totems, and disappeared into the tunnel's depths. Anthem stood with her glaive at the ready. Please, Quirrell said. It's only an arm. A loss, certainly, but you still have your life. Do not throw that away. Do not let this wound define you. Anthem laughed, but it was patchy and mirthless. Amusing that you would say that. A great knight once told me the very opposite, that we are defined only by our scars. Every mark is an indelible reminder of failure. A nail unparried, a club undodged. The shell does not record triumphs, only mistakes. Quirrell swiped at the air with his claw. That is miserable counsel. He could feel the petulance in his voice, but he didn't care. A bug is more than its shell, more than its limbs. If that great knight thinks that... Quirrell. He stopped. Thank you, she said. What? Thank you for your time, for your words. But you have done enough. Go now. Witness the wonders of this land. Do not look back from me. Please, must you do this? But she faded into the tunnel without a goodbye. The only sign of her passage was the slither of displaced vines. Quirrell thought to follow, but his legs denied him. A stink of menace permeated the place, and his well-worn instincts urged him to leave, quickly. He walked a tight circuit, and then another. He strained to hear any signs of combat, but there was only silence. Are you really so stubborn a fool? He hissed, though Anthem was long since gone. He hurled a kick at one of the giant teeth and immediately regretted it. As he knelt to clutch his throbbing foot, a stillness settled on him. Am I? A slow breath escaped his body, and he stood. So it seems. As Quirrell pressed through the vines, they seized and snagged at him, enjoining that he turn back. The tunnel was stifling and dim, saturated with a feral redolence that made every step harder than the last. He silenced the morbid chatter in his mind, suppressed the tremor in his arms. He had committed himself to the path, just as Anthem had. With a bloom of light, the vines parted, and a verdant cavern opened before him. Within stood Anthem, and beyond a strange sort of cave occupying the center of the floor. The cave was composed entirely of leaves, and like the tunnel entrance, its opening was ringed with giant teeth. Quirrell swallowed the lump in his throat and placed himself at Anthem's side. She gave him half a glance. It is too late to dissuade me. Oh, you needn't worry. I've abandoned that folly. Then why do you linger? See to your own quest while you still may. Quirrell made his best attempt at an easy shrug. But I am seeing to my quest. If I'm to witness this land's wonders, then I'd best begin here. I can think of few things more extraordinary than a hero's duel. Anthem's defenses slackened. She turned to him in full. What? Quirrell loosened his nail from its silken belt and drew it for the first time in what had somehow felt like ages. I would be remiss not to experience this myself. Anthem was stone still for a moment. It seems I was right, she whispered. You are indeed a strange one. But as you wish. And she returned to her battle stance. So, Quirrell said, scanning the room, where does the creature lurk? In that cave, I'd wager? She almost laughed. In? No. Within the darkness of the cave, 6 luminous eyes snapped open, and a roar, the very same that had frozen Quirrell in his tracks, ripped through the cavern. The earth shook, and Quirrell staggered, but then the roar suddenly stopped. A rasping voice reached out through the ring of teeth. A scent. Close. Familiar. The prey returns. But why? Anthem took a step forward. She lifted her glaive and pointed its piercing tip at the glowing eyes. Rise, monster. You will not catch me unaware again. There was a rumble, something like amusement. It is wounded, yet it seeks to hunt me. Bold, stupid. This time, I will take its other arm. Then it will understand its place. With a great trembling, the cave rose into the air, shedding leaves and twigs like layers of dust. A midnight black body, bipedal and emaciated, held it aloft. Quirrell startled, falling back a step. He labored to comprehend what he beheld. The cave was its head? Those shadowy segments its limbs? The tooth-ringed cavity its mouth? Steady, Anthem whispered, or it will wield that fear against you. Quirrell closed both claws around his nail. Right. The creature loomed, massive and terrible. Its long, pointed fingers flexed, and Quarrel couldn't help but notice that each was the length of his own arm.
"It brings aid,"
the creature observed, setting 6 eyes upon him.
"A sorry pack."
"Why so verbose, monster?" Anthem asked. "You did not spare me a single word at our last meeting. Do you hesitate? Is that cowardice I sense?" The creature's only retort was a shell-rattling bellow. It leapt, cratering the earth with the force, and soared through the air. With clutching hands extended, the creature descended toward Anthem. She let out a warning shout and threw herself to one side. The creature impacted in a geyser of dirt and pulverized stone, sending Quarrel tumbling. Its arms threshed this way and that, slicing the veil but not finding their target. With a shriek and an arc of sparks, Anthem's glaive slashed the creature's back. It grunted in either pain or surprise and darted out of the weapon's range. Before Quarrel could right himself and join the melee, the creature retreated into the heaps of foliage ringing the cavern. After a rustle, the creature was gone. Anthem stepped out of the hanging dust, shaken but intact. "Be wary! It will strike where you are most vulnerable."
"Weak,"
growled the creature. Its voice carried from beyond the wall of green, but the acoustics of the place made it impossible to pinpoint.
"Without strength it cannot harm me. Not then, and not now. Yet in vain it hopes to try."
There was a rush of air, a murmur of disturbed leaves, and a high shadow upon Quarrel's shoulder. "Look out!" Quarrel dove, and a dread hand slammed into the ground where he had been standing. He rolled and skidded to his feet, spinning about to face the creature, but it was not there. It had vanished back into the brush. "How is that hulking thing so swift?" Quarrel shouted. He withdrew to the center of the cavern, and Anthem followed, pressing her back to his. "Keep your wits," Anthem said. "We are performing much better than my last encounter." "But have we even scratched it?" Anthem grew quiet. The only sound was Quarrel's heavy breathing. "I know of a way we might succeed," she whispered, "though it would ask much of you." "Ha!" Quarrel lowered his voice in kind. "What have I to lose? I'll hear it." "You must drop your guard and allow it to take you." Pardon?" "I have witnessed its habits. It prefers to understand its prey before the kill. The creature will grapple you first. As it prepares to disassemble you, it will be vulnerable. At that moment, I will take its arm." There was a wild flutter in Quarrel's chest. "Disassemble me? Have we no other option?" "None." Quarrel willed his heart to slow. "I'll do it." "Then approach the brush, and do not flinch." Though his legs were like lead, they did as Quarrel bid them. He sidled up to the bushes and made a show of prodding at them with his nail, all the while feeling the creature's eyes upon him.
"It believes me deaf, does it?"
a guttural voice asked.
"That its whispers are not a screech to my senses."
In an explosion of leaves, a gray-black blur shot out to snatch Quarrel by the torso. He struck with his nail on reflex, but it was slapped from his claw so forcefully that every joint in his arm popped. A second blow fell on him, and the world spun a mad dance. Once it slowed, Quarrel found himself suspended in the air, eye to eye with the creature.
"It thinks too much of itself,"
the thing said. Quarrel tried to cry out, but the hand clenching his chest made that, and breathing, impossible. He scratched uselessly at the carapace of the creature's arm. Across the cavern, Anthem crouched. Her long legs bulged beneath her. She leveled her glaive, braced it against her side, and shot forth like a thunderbolt. She flew in a perfect arc, glaive readied for an overhead slash. But as she neared, the creature whipped about. It lifted Quarrel as though he were a nail meant to parry Anthem's blow. There was no time, no way to stop. A vision of decapitation flitted through Quarrel's mind. But at the last instant, Anthem twisted about, altering her blade's trajectory. The flashing metal narrowly rounded Quarrel's body, and instead connected with the creature's wrist. Another scream of metal on carapace, another sheet of sparks. Anthem's warped momentum sent her slamming to the ground. She rolled and pitched, her glaive clanging away into a dark corner. She slid to a stop and lay very still. Coral fell, impacting flat on his back. He sprawled, dazed and coughing. Where was the creature's hand? Surely Anthem had severed it. Despite the protests of his shell, Coral pushed to a sitting position. No, he breathed. Several paces off, the creature, not a mark upon it, towered over Anthem's unconscious body. Extending two ebony fingers, the creature grasped Anthem by the arm and dangled her in the air. She came to and began to thrash, kicking at the creature. It closed its other hand around her torso and squeezed until she stopped.
Enough,
the creature said.
This hunt is finished. A noble prey knows when to embrace the end.
Bring me my glaive, and I will show you an end, she snarled. The creature only chuckled and began to pull. Anthem's arm strained in its socket. There was a sickening crack. She did not cry out, however, and that gave the creature pause.
It does not wail. It does not fear.
The creature's huge, bushy head lowered for a closer look.
Is it even the same prey?
Coral lurched to his feet, but before he could act, he was just as quickly back upon the ground. The world tremored around him, and his legs barely heeded any commands. The blow he suffered was proving much worse than it had first seemed. Go on! Take it! Anthem cried, forcing the words even as she choked. But slay me this time, or I will have your life if it takes my every limb. The creature hummed, an ugly, graveled sound.
It is fiercer now. Interesting. But ferocity is nothing without strength.
It tensed, preparing to divest Anthem of her arm. But then came a pattering, a wet, dribbling sound. The creature stopped. Blood, pale green and glistening, was streaming down its wrist and onto the parched soil of the cavern floor. The creature looked from the growing puddle to Anthem and back again.
You wounded me.
As I promised, Anthem gasped. Free me, and I will do far worse. The creature laughed in great rippling waves. Coral fought to his knees, but could manage no further.
Long has it been since I saw my own blood,
the creature said.
Greater beasts than you have tried and failed to draw it. Yet here I bleed.
The hand slackened, and Anthem dropped from the creature's grip. In a dizzy burst, Coral dove forward, catching her as best he could, though he served more as a cushion than a net. The creature carried on as Anthem gulped and heaved.
You are stronger now than you were before, and yet weaker. With both arms, you failed to pierce my shell. Yet here, you managed that task with only one. Before, you were nothing but listlessness and fear, yet now you are audacity itself. How?
She had no answer for the creature, and only trembled. In wrath or pain, Coral could not guess. The creature leaned back, lifting a hand to its darkened maw, and extracting something from within.
You are not prey. I feel it now. And if you are not prey, then you must be a hunter. But can a maimed thing truly hunt?
The smooth shell of a long dead bug clattered to the ground. Its surface glittered in the ambient light, revealing a scrawl of strange runic script. The creature crouched, bringing its eyes closer to Anthem's level.
My spare journal, all that I have learned from the beasts of this land. I offer it to you, broken hunter. Go forth, prove your strength, stalk, kill, decipher its meaning, and grow mighty.
With Coral's aid, Anthem sat up. Do not toy with me. I care nothing for your journal. If you seek some apprentice, then look elsewhere. I am here for your life, not your tutelage." The creature nodded, almost indulgently.
"Yet, you cannot take it. You are still too frail. But with time and my journal, that may change. Return to me when you think yourself ready. I will be waiting."
With that, the thing rose and paced back to the cavern's center. It shuffled a leisurely circle before laying down and once again disguising itself as a leafy cave. All returned to stillness. A minute of gawking silence stretched by, Coral's gaze upon the creature, and Anthem's upon the fallen journal. When it became clear that the creature had no intention of springing back to life and finishing its hunt, Coral risked a few words. Did we survive?" Anthem stirred in his arms. "By the whim of a monster, so it appears. But what now?" I had hoped to pose that question. With agonizing slowness, Coral tottered upright. A numbness had seeped into him, making everything indistinct and remote. He wondered if it was a lingering effect of the creature's attack, or merely that feeling of vacancy that follows the departure of terror. Anthem seemed in no better state than he. Her carapace was scuffed and cracked, especially her arm with its spider-webbing fractures. She sat in a ball, legs bent to her chest. "Our weapons," she said, not even looking up. Coral pressed a claw to his pounding head. Yes, I'll retrieve them. Just wait a moment." It took some time rooting through the deep underbrush, but Coral dredged up his nail. The glaive was soon to follow, and as he wiped stray twigs from its gleaming blades, he appraised it for damage. There was none, of course. It was a fine tool, razor sharp and expertly balanced. Anthem clearly invested much into maintaining it. Coral envisioned the battles it had endured, the foes it had slain, and to what end it would inevitably be wielded. A thought bubbled. Should he leave the glaive where it lay? Hide it, even? Anthem had made her intentions clear. If he returned it to her, then she would surely lunge at the creature again, and Coral doubted the thing would be so forgiving the second time. From the start, Coral had known this bid for vengeance to be utter madness, and witnessing the creature's savagery in person had only hardened that truth in his mind. Without her weapon, would Anthem abandon the hunt? Would she find another purpose, one that did not end in doom? He looked about for a crevice, a pit, a dark cavity beneath a shrub, but he stopped. Another thought rose, bursting the first. Did he possess any authority over her fate? Coral emerged from the brush, nail upon his belt, the glaive under his arm. Anthem was exactly as he'd left her, as though no time had passed at all. "Not a mark upon it," Coral said, proffering the glaive with only slight hesitance. "A fine twist of luck." She did not react. "Anthem?" The chitin of her arm crackled as she reached out and closed her claw around the journal. "It is time to leave." Coral balked. "What?" "Even a mantis's obstinacy has limits." She stood, panting from the pain. "I'm not one to question a sound idea, but are you really finished here?" For a long moment, Anthem stared at the lightless jaws of the cave. "Yes, there is no reason to remain." Coral gave a sharp nod. "Then let's not tarry." He sidled up to her and offered his shoulder. "I thought you had renounced your life as a crutch," she said. Coral couldn't stop his bubbling laugh. "After this most recent trial, carrying you seems a trivial task." "Very well," Anthem said. She draped her arm over him and leaned, but lightly, ever so lightly. End of You Can Walk It Off, Just Try, by Nim P. Pseudo.